Story number 1. This happened a couple of months ago. I was at a friend's house one night and didn't realize how late it was. Around 2 a.m. I love sleeping in my own bed, so I decided to call an Uber instead of staying over. My friend lives in a more rural area of town, so it took a while to get an Uber, and it was around a 40-minute drive back home. Upon getting into the Uber, the first comment he made was telling me how pretty I was. Immediate red flags started going off in my head. I'm already a very anxious person, and I've always been afraid of taking Ubers alone, especially at night, so I already was on edge before the comment was made. I just replied, "Thank you," and he started to drive me home. My friend was a man, and I assumed the Uber saw him standing at the doorway before we left, because 5 minutes into the drive he asked, "Was that your boyfriend?" At this point I didn't answer. Around 10 minutes into the drive, the Uber driver tells me that he knows a faster route to get to my house, and that we're going to take a detour. I immediately start to panic inside, because as an anxious Uber rider, I consistently watch the Uber app on the driver's phone and need to be following the map. Also, this detour seemed to be going deeper and deeper down these rural roads, first into the city where my house is. I then called my dad, but because it was past 3 a.m. at this point, he didn't answer the phone. I then decide to dial 911. The operator answers me right away, and I act like I'm talking to my dad on the phone. She immediately sensed that I was unable to tell her the exact situation, but I acted like I was telling my dad that I was in an Uber and would be home soon. She then started to ask me questions about the color of the car, by having me simply answer yes or no, the make of the car, and my location. She asked if I was in danger, and I said, "I don't know." After telling her my location, she then told me to tell the Uber driver to get on the highway, because the detour he had taken consisted of more rural roads. Thankfully, we were only around 5 minutes from the highway, and then another 10 minutes from the police station. She told me to tell the Uber driver to drop me off at a house in a neighborhood close to the police station, and advised that an officer would be waiting there for me to take me home. After politely trying to beg the Uber to change the address, he finally did and continued to go in that direction. I stayed on the phone with the operator until I reached the destination. Sure enough, an officer was waiting a couple of houses down. I got out of the Uber and walked straight towards his car. I'm not sure if I was overreacting about the situation due to my anxiety, especially by calling 911. But the alarms were going off so loud in my head that I genuinely thought I needed to in that situation. I now only take Uber alone in the daytime, and always share my ride with my parents or my friends. Stay safe, everyone. Story number 2. The night was cool, the air thick with unease. Sarah, 22, sat in the back of the rideshare car, staring out the window. The streetlights flickered, casting jagged shadows across her face. She glanced at her phone. The map blinked, showing the route to her apartment. She was tired, the kind of tired that seeped into her bones. "Long night?" The driver's voice cut through the silence. He had a gravelly tone laced with an unsettling warmth. Sarah turned to look at him. He was in his late 30s with dark hair slicked back and a thin, tight smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Just a bit." She forced a smile, trying to quell the knot forming in her stomach. "Where'd you come from?" He probed, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. "Just a friend's place." The driver nodded, but his eyes lingered on her. A chill crept up her spine. She felt exposed like a moth under a glaring light. As they drove deeper into the city, the familiarity of her surroundings began to fade. The streetlights grew sparser, shadows stretching like fingers across the pavement. "It looks like we're heading a different way," Sarah said, her voice shaky. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that sent shivers through her. "Just taking a shortcut. Trust me, I'll get us there faster." But the way he said, "Trust me," made her heart race. A few blocks later, they turned onto a dimly lit street. The buildings loomed dark and foreboding. Sarah's instinct screamed. She pulled out her phone and checked the map once more. "This isn't the right way," she said, a hint of panic rising in her voice. He glanced at her, his smile widening. "It's a different route. I promise you'll love it." Fear coiled around in her chest. She needed to stay calm. "Can you just take me to my place, please?" His eyes flickered into the mirror again, and for a moment a flash of something cold crossed his face. "You don't want to go home just yet, do you? It's such a beautiful night." The car slowed and he turned onto a secluded road. Trees lined the sides, their branches like skeletal hands reaching for her. Panic surged. "Please, just stop the car." He laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. "Why, are you scared? I'm just a driver. Let me out." She felt the heat rise in her cheeks, tears threatening to spill. "Sarah," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You don't know the half of it." And then he slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop jolted her forward. She grasped the seat. "What are you doing?" He turned to her, his smile now twisted, eyes glinting with menace. "You should be more careful about who you trust." In that moment, she saw him for what he was, a predator lurking behind a mask of civility. Her heart pounded. She needed to act. She reached for the door handle, but he was faster, locking the doors with a click that echoed in the stillness. "Please," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I just want to go home." He leaned closer, his breath hot against her skin. "You'll have a much better time with me." The darkness outside felt alive, and the weight of his gaze suffocated her. But then something shifted inside of her. A spark of defiance ignited. She thought of her mother, the warmth of her embrace, of her friends waiting for her, the laughter they shared. "Get out of the car, Sarah," she whispered to herself. With sudden force, she kicked the back of the driver's seat hard. He jerked forward, surprised, seizing the moment she yanked the door handle. It was locked. "Stop!" he shouted, but she was already scrambling. She leaned forward and smashed her elbow into the side of his head. The driver swerved, distracted. The car veered off the road, and in that split second she yanked the door open. The night air rushed in like a tide. She dove out, rolling onto the gravel. Pain shot through her arm, but she didn't stop. She scrambled to her feet, heart racing, and ran. The sound of the engine roaring to life followed her. "Come back," he yelled, rage dripping from his voice. But she didn't look back. She ran through the darkness, feet pounding, breath coming in sharp bursts. As she reached a busy street, the lights from the shops flickered to life. She stumbled into view of a group of people, their laughter breaking the spell of fear. She was safe. In that moment, Sarah felt a rush of hope. She had escaped the nightmare. The terror lingered in her mind, but she wouldn't let it define her. She stood taller, heart still racing, ready to claim her life, one step at a time. Story number 3. My roommate doesn't drive, so in order to get to work, she almost always gets a ride from her coworker. A couple of days ago, she was waiting outside our house, and her coworker seems to be running late. After waiting a minute or two, the car pulls up and the driver says he's her Uber. My roommate says no, she didn't order an Uber. She's waiting for her coworker. The driver insists that her coworker ordered the Uber for her and to get in the car now or she'll be late to work. My roommate calls her coworker to see if this is true, and her coworker says she's just down the street and don't get in that car. The fake Uber driver then immediately drives off. I've heard plenty of stories of people encountering fake Uber drivers. What is incredibly creepy about this one to me, however, is every fake Uber story I've heard has involved someone waiting for a ride in a busy place. An airport, a bar, a club, places you would expect to have a lot of people waiting for rides. This happened right outside my house. Is this a common thing? Are people known to drive around neighborhoods looking for people who look like they're waiting for a ride? What do you guys think? Story number 4. I live in a major city where Lyft and Uber get used so often because of the nightlife. Last week I was going to meet my friend at a bar downtown. Took a Lyft so I didn't have to worry about parking or drunk driving. I ordered my Lyft, and 10 minutes later the man arrived. He was an older man, maybe in his 70s, thick accent and very frail. Because of his age and fragility, I wasn't scared, which I normally would be when riding late with an unknown male. I got in the car and said good evening, to which I got no reply. Normally I put my headphones on, so I don't have to make conversation with the driver. But since he was quiet from the beginning, I didn't have to. About 5 minutes into the ride, he turns the volume up on his stereo and puts in a CD. Immediately I start hearing moaning noises and look up from my phone thinking he's playing adult films. However, it turns out to be a song, with the entirety of the background noise being moaning. The lyrics are even worse, and I immediately take my headphones out to listen to my own music. Closer to my destination, he takes a wrong turn into a one-way street, closed off and dimly lit. At this point, I'm very aware and turn my music all the way down. He slows down so much to the point where I think he's going to stop the car. At this point, I'm unbuckled and ready to run, when he turns around and stares at me, not saying a single word. I immediately call my friend and tell her I'm close and to come meet me outside. The man finally gets back onto Main Street, and we reach our destination. When I try to open the door, I discover he had child lock on the whole time, but thankfully my friend recognized me and opened the door. I leave the car right away. Before I do anything, I report him on the app. Thankfully, nothing happened to me, but the whole encounter was so strange and creepy, I just had to share it. Story number 5. Today I got into a Lyft, and the driver was an old man, in his late 50s, early 60s. Anyways, my destination is less than 10 minutes away. A quick trip down the street. The man starts making light conversation, asking how my day is going and the whatnot. I make a joke about how I don't even remember, and the next thing he says made my blood run cold instantly.
What if I just kidnapped you?
I'm silent.
Huh. Bad joke, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. At this point, I'm just praying to God he takes me home. I start thinking of how to open the door and jump out if I need to. Thankfully, I arrived safely at my destination and sent an email to Lyft about the incident. But seriously, really? Story number 6. Last night, as my boyfriend and I were waiting for our Uber, I decided to check the driver's profile, and I was taken aback by his profile picture and the number of rides completed compared to how long he'd been on the platform. His profile picture was him, but with an American flag and Blue Lives Matters flag in the background. And as a person of color, that definitely set off a red flag in my head, but also I wouldn't cancel a ride over that. Just something to be careful of. Then, the other red flag was the fact he had been on the platform for 1 year, but only completed 11 rides, all 5 stars though. So the rating alone is what made me more comfortable enough to continue with this driver, but I was definitely a bit weary. The driver pulls up to my neighbor's house. A man immediately hops out of the passenger seat. The driver almost hits him as he begins approaching my boyfriend and I, and at this point we stop and ask what's going on. The guy that got out of the car says,
"It's your Uber. Get in."
Mind you, the driver has now pulled up and is leaning outside of his car, silently smoking a cigarette while all this is unfolding. So I turn to my boyfriend and say,
"Let's just cancel this, because this is sketchy, and he shouldn't have anyone else in his car anyways."
Then, my boyfriend is trying to get some clarity on what's happening. Because what is happening? And the passenger begins to yell at him. That's when we cancel the ride, and my boyfriend said, "We're canceling." To me and my boyfriend, they seemed drunk. I reported it through the app and also called Uber support to make sure they got the complaint documented. I'm just curious to what others think about what happened in this situation. And overall, just be safe out there, everyone. Story number 7. A man accused in a deadly rush hour shooting in Oregon is facing prison time after a jury found him guilty of murder and attempted murder charges, officials said. Jeffrey Edward Hammond, 48, was convicted May 1st of murder in the second degree and attempted murder in the second degree in the 2023 shooting in downtown Portland, the Multnomah County District Attorney's Office said in a news release. He first went on trial on those charges and others in late 2024, but the jury couldn't reach a unanimous verdict on the murder and attempted murder charges. He was found guilty during the trial of first-degree assault with a firearm and 2 counts of unlawful use of a weapon with a firearm, prosecutors said. Hammond is accused of fatally shooting Ryan Martin, 47, on October 11, 2023. Hammond was driving for Uber, and he was stopped in front of a hotel in downtown, partially blocking a lane of traffic at rush hour, prosecutors said. Martin was behind him and said something out the window to Hammond as his truck squeezed by Hammond's car, according to prosecutors. Hammond then flipped Martin off, prosecutors said. Martin got out of his truck and walked to Hammond's car to confront him, and Hammond shot Martin in the chest. Martin, who'd been on his way home from his child's soccer game, lay on the ground, unable to move. The bullet went through Martin's lung and spine, according to prosecutors. Hammond made another attempt to shoot Martin, but the gun malfunctioned. Witnesses described watching Hammond try to fix his gun while saying,
"You're lucky I didn't shoot you in the heart."
Another man, Sam Gomez, stumbled upon the scene, pulled out his phone to document what was happening. Gomez was immediately shot in the leg by Hammond, who slowly drove away, according to prosecutors. Hammond said in a 911 call that he felt justified in shooting the men because Martin menaced him and because Gomez might have had a weapon. Neither Martin nor Gomez were armed, according to prosecutors. Uber couldn't immediately be reached by McClatchy News about the case May 2nd. On a GoFundMe page, Martin was described as a devoted husband, a loving father to 8 children in a blended family, a cherished son, and a pillar in the community. His life was a tapestry woven of threads of passion for family, youth sports, music, and a deep commitment to those around him. Hammond is scheduled to be sentenced in June and faces life in prison with parole possible after 25 years in the connection with the second-degree murder conviction, prosecutors said. What do you guys think his sentence should be? He tried to murder 2 men. Story number 8. In Fort Lee, New Jersey, a 25-year-old man is accused of stabbing an Uber driver trying to carjack his vehicle in Fort Lee on Tuesday. The police responded to the stabbing on Duncan Avenue just after 9:15 a.m. Officials say the victim was driving the suspect, Marcus Marson, when he stabbed the driver multiple times while demanding to take custody of the vehicle. The 37-year-old victim was found with stab wounds to his arm and shoulder. He was taken to the hospital where he remains stable. Marson was caught by Fort Lee police officers behind a house about a block away from the scene. Marson had his first court appearance Wednesday afternoon and will remain behind bars until his next court appearance. Marson is being charged with attempted murder, attempted carjacking, aggravated assault, possession of a weapon for unlawful purposes, and resisting arrest. Police say he's appeared to be under the influence at the time of the crime. A spokesperson from Uber released the following statement.
"This violent act is sickening. We're working to get in touch with the driver and have banned the rider. We will assist law enforcement however we can."
Thank you guys for watching this video until the very end. And those of you who stuck with me on this video until the end, if you haven't yet, please make sure to subscribe for future content, leave a like, comment, and help share the channel with as many people as you can. To have your truly terrifying story featured on an upcoming video, email me at the email in the description box below. Till we meet again, my friends, stay safe out there.